Okay, we'll call the meeting to order then. I'll begin by acknowledging that we are in Treaty 1 territory in the traditional homeland of the Métis Nation. As directed by Manitoba Health, we are requesting people avoid close contact within 2 meters with anyone showing symptoms of respiratory illness, such as coughing or sneezing. If you're experiencing flu-like symptoms, we're requesting that you excuse yourself from the room. Please note, when you join the meeting via Zoom, all participants will be placed in the waiting room and your microphone will be muted until the host lets you in the room. You can follow the hearing live via the City's Board of Revision YouTube channel. When your property is called upon, you will be allowed from the waiting room and permitted to speak with respect to your property. Once you have been heard, you can leave the meeting and continue to watch the hearing live via the YouTube channel. If any participants are currently watching the meeting live on YouTube, please mute your audio player now. My name is Neil Harden. I am chairing today's panel. With me in the room is Carrie Linklater, and via Zoom is Jeff Feitchen. The assessor today is Jason Brown, and the recording secretary is Kara Bradshaw. We will be hearing applications for revision of the assessment rule in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision is requested have been described in each application, and we will limit discussion to those matters. The statements that are made at this hearing are sworn testimony, and anyone speaking to the matters must be sworn in. Be advised that comparison of assessments of properties are not considered evidence of market value by the board. The board is appointed annually by council and is independent of it in the city administration. It makes its decisions on the basis of the evidence provided at this hearing and issues a written order to be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the board's decisions with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or the Court of Queen's Bench if the matter pertains to the application of exemptions from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included with the board's order. With respect to the hearing process, I will confirm the points of appeal with your property to be addressed with each applicant following the swearing in. We will then have the assessor's testimony followed by questions the applicant may have, and the applicant's testimony followed by questions. Each side will have an opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all the evidence about an application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for each item on the docket today. The session will close after all the applications have been heard, and the board will deliberate in private and make its decisions. You will receive the board's decision by registered mail as soon as possible. As information, all public hearings are live streamed and recorded. And will be part of the public record. The use of cell phones is not permitted except by the approval of the chair. So the first item on the agenda today is 730 Berry Street. So Kara, can you do the swearing in?
Yes. Mr. Assessor, for the record, please state your name.
Jason Brown.
Do you affirm the evidence you'll present today is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. And Mr. Applicant representing Colliers, for the record, please state your name.
Rocky Neufeld.
Do you affirm any evidence you'll present today is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
That looked like one of the horror movies. Okay, you can begin, Mr. Brown.
Sorry, just to speed things up, I talked to Jason yesterday. He knows we're going to be confirming this, so if he can read in whatever he wants.
Okay, just read in the, go briefly over your material and...
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is file number 20-826. Address is located at 730 Berry Street. Roll number is 50114. And I am defending a value of $1,166,340. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any questions from the panel on this?
No questions.
No questions.
Okay, thank you very much. That concludes this property.
Sorry, just just to say I'm confirming it, and I just wanted to give you a very short background.
Sure.
And this is a COVID-related appeal, and the business has dropped to 25% of its former level because of forced shutdowns. So we have a number of these appeals at the municipal board, and we are trying to arrange for a test case. And other municipalities, we are now hearing, have begun their deliberations in court on whether COVID is to be treated as a market factor or a physical factor. And we anticipate the court's decisions in other provinces very shortly. So I think we're told they're probably going to call it a physical factor. And I think that will impact Manitoba's view on it. So I just want to be upfront about everything. Partially, the reason for the delay in not arguing this today. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Rocky, for that. It'd be very useful to get some direction from higher authority on these sort of issues.
Authority.
Okay, thank you. That concludes 730 Barrie. So 7 Higgins Avenue. So can you swear the applicant in, Kara?
Okay. So good morning. For the record, please state your name and you're just, oh, there you go. Yes, please state your name.
Bedford Scott Borgstrom.
Do you affirm the evidence you'll present today is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Okay, let me just pull up the files. All right. So you can proceed, Mr. Brown, with 7 Higgins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is file number 20-836, located at 7 Higgins Avenue. Roll number is 20966. Current ARV is at 147,960. This was heard at the Board of Revision on the realty level where it was reduced. Mr. Borgstrom was nice enough to provide his workup for me prior to the hearing. I went over his calculations and I'm going to agree with his number at 134,340.
So that's a recommendation of 1. What was the number?
134,340.
134,340. Okay, Mr. Bergstrom, do you have anything to add on this?
Only that I always find it hard to argue against my own numbers.
There are some people capable. Okay, any questions from the panel on this?
No questions.
I have a quick question. So what is the rationale for that reduction?
So this property in realty was done on cost. So typically for BA on a cost property, we'll take 10% of the realty value, which is what Brad has done. And then there are 2 outbuildings that are unheated storage. I believe Brad has used a $2 rent on those, which I feel is justified.
Okay, thank you. I have no other questions.
Okay, thank you. So that concludes item 4 then. We will go on to 310 Donald, but let me pull up the files first of all. Okay, everybody got the files opened?
Yes.
Okay, so Mr. Brown, can you proceed on 310 Donald?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. This is file number 20-839. Roll number is 51400. Property is located at 310 Donald Street. This is the Alt Hotel. So similar to cost properties, hotels are done on what we call an economic calculation. So we take the realty value, we take 10% of that, and then we apply occupancy costs to the square footage. So this was heard in 2020. I have the board order attached. So it was reduced from 10,277,000 down to 7,300,000. There is no muni board on that realty decision. But there is a muni board on the 2020 BA, which wasn't affected by that reduction because that reduction was in 2021. So for the 2021 BA, I'm going to recommend a reduction. The original business assessment was $1,250,640. You can see my calculations below. We started with the revised realty figure at $7,300,000. We've taken 10% of that. We've applied the cost to occupy at 91,020 square feet. When we add those together, we get the rounded 2021 ARV at 952,980. And that would be my recommendation.
Okay, and how do you feel about that recommendation, Mr. Bergstrom?
We have actually a discrepancy in the premise area. I went with the city records, and I can certainly question the assessor about it, or I can just proceed with my brief. The city's own records indicate a premise area of 86,964 square feet. We go through the same calculations as the assessor, but our occupancy costs therefore differ slightly because of the lower premise area.
Okay. So in other words, you're not accepting the recommendation. So I'll ask Mr. Brown first of all. Then, since this is contested, if there's anything he would like to add to his brief, especially dealing with the issue at hand of the area, I guess.
I'll just save it for questioning. Thank you.
Okay. Any questions from the panel to the assessor?
No questions at this time. Thank you.
I do have one obvious question. So where do you derive the 91,020 square feet?
That would have been taken right off the permit. When a new building is built, we get the architectural plans, we get the mechanical plans. I'm trying to pull them up right now, but the file's so big that it won't open. So that would have been taken right off the blueprints. This is obviously a bit of a different building as it has two components. There's Stantec has their offices in the lower podium, and then the hotel is built on top of that. But yeah, we would have got those numbers right off the blueprints.
Okay, and if I recall correctly, the Stantec is on a different roll number?
Correct.
Okay. Any other questions?
I don't, thank you.
No.
Okay. So, Brad, you can proceed then.
So excuse me, I just want to describe the building very briefly. It is, the premise under appeal is the Alt Hotel, and the assessor is quite correct in that there is an office component within this building as well, but there's also main floor space. And there is some, I'll call it retail development on the main floor. So it is a little bit unusual. I'm going to take you, just to go through this very briefly, I'm going to take you to page 9 of our submission. And you'll see at the top there, this was actually printed out 5 days ago on January 22nd of this year. And you'll see there the total premise area of 86,964. That's what we base our calculations on for the purposes of the occupancy costs. Now, it may well be because of the peculiarities of this building with common elevators, common stairwells, that the city has made that adjustment. But certainly the city's own records indicate that that's the calculation upon which the original business assessment of $1,250,640 came into effect. And so based on all of that, we agree that the reduction of the economic rent should be based on the Board of Revision decision at $7.3 million. We've included a workup on that on page 5. We go through the calculations on page 7. So 10% of that works out to the economic rent calculation, $730,000. The occupancy costs, full occupancy for heat, hydro, water, and air conditioning. So we're talking about a very minor difference, but it's based on the city's own figures. So we're seeking a reduction to $943,080 based on all of that.
Okay. Questions, Mr. Brown?
Just one on your page 5, Brad. That's your realty workup.
Yes.
I just will note that you do have 91,020 square feet as the ground floor area or the gross floor area in that.
That is the gross floor area. However, premise area for the purposes of business tax is different. And I've gone with the city's own records on this matter.
Okay. Yeah, like I just saw this morning, so I'm trying to find a relevant document, but there's thousands and thousands of pages of documents attached to this permit. So that being said, yeah, I don't really have an answer for that.
So if I might, just before the board moves on, just a quick comment to Jason. I think that we can probably dispose of the 2020 BA appeal, much as was done with the Kildonan Motor Hotel, where there was an appeal on the BA without the realty, and ultimately at the municipal board, the city settled that. So.
Well, yeah, but you did have a subsequent realty decision in the same cycle.
No, I understand that. What I'm suggesting is that the 2020 should be disposed of on the same basis.
Yeah, that will be negotiated at the meeting based on this decision.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Harry, do you have any questions?
I have none, thank you.
Jeff?
I have none, thanks.
Okay. And I have none, so thank you very much for that. We will now go to 123 Regent Avenue. Let me just pull up the files. Okay, so 123 Regent Avenue West, you can proceed, Mr. Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is file 20-840. Subject property is located at 123 Regent Avenue West. Business roll number is 6717, and this is the Royal George Hotel. This was heard at the Board of Revision on the realty level. In 2020, the assessment was confirmed at $470,000. So once again, we've taken 10% of that figure. We've added the cost to occupy. I've reduced the air conditioning space because only the main level of the hotel is air conditioned. And based on those revised areas, I'm going to reduce a ARV of 73,680, down from 78,840.
Okay. Questions, Mr. Bergstrom?
Just a few. And so this matter is pending at the municipal board, correct, for the 2020 realty?
That's correct. And in these cases, I always think the best course of value is to confirm the BA as well, and then we can deal with the BA once the realty is heard at the Muni board and settle there.
I understand. In terms of your evaluation, you provided no supporting documentation, no analysis on the basis upon which your figures are stabilized to arrive at $470,000 as a value. Is that correct?
No, those figures were heard already at the 2020 Board of Revision.
So let me slow you down there. I'm talking about your brief here today. Within your brief here today, you haven't included any evidence with respect to the derivation of a value of $470,000. Is that correct?
Just the realty decision confirming that value.
Right. So you have no departmental analysis, nothing other than your workup you show on page. It's not numbered, but
no. This is the way we've always done it. We like to keep realty at the realty level, and then the BA can be adjusted at the municipal board once that the municipal board realty has been heard.
Those are my questions. Thank you.
Okay, Jeff, any questions of the assessor?
Not at this time, thank you.
Carrie, any questions?
No, thank you.
Okay, you can proceed, Mr. Borgstrom then.
Thank you. So this is the Royal George Hotel. It's located in Transcona. It is what you would typically describe as a gallonage hotel, turn of the century construction, rooms rented by the month, common bathrooms typically, and really this property is no different. The majority of the income from a business or a going concern perspective is derived from the beverage room and VLTs, generally speaking, in this type of hotel. So we do show an exterior picture on page 1, and I'm going to take you down and a bit of a description on page 3. I'm going to take you down to page 6, wherein we include our analysis based on the 2015, 16, and 17 income and expenses actual of the property. We go through a process of stabilization. You'll see there at lines 27 and 29, there are line items under the stabilized category. Line 27, while it shows as a description management, that's actually a mechanism by which we remove the business value. Reserve on line 29. It doesn't show up as an operating expense in any hotel's statements. However, this is the mechanism by which we purport to remove business value and allow for a reserve. This is long established practice, and you'll see there the very right-hand columns are in the amounts of 4% and 3%. I can tell you what they are comprised of, but to speed things along a little bit, I'll just tell you that that's why there's going to be a great difference between the actual net operating income of the property and the stabilized net operating income. The other difference typically is within the way that the owner takes salary. Sometimes they will take a very large salary. Sometimes they will take it in the form of dividends. But that compensation needs to be recognized. That goes back to the decision on the McLaren dating back to 2011, where the municipal board held that an appropriate compensation for owners' time in running these operations, if you were to hire an independent manager or the owner does it, that should be allowed for. And so typically that calculation is 10% of the gross revenues, excluding excluding VLTs. And so this is the same process that we've gone through here. And so we think that the appropriate realty value based on all of this should be $204,000. I can tell you that the capitalization rate at 15% and the personal property allowance at 10% are standard for this type of property. And so that's what we've allowed based on all of that. And I don't believe there's a difference in the occupancy costs here. On page 8, we show the calculations. And so based on the suggested realty value at $204,000, less there is a tenant in the basement. It's a place that makes wings. From that, we need to deduct that tenant area from the gross floor area. We show that calculation on the right-hand side under economic rent. And so with the adjusted economic rent and the costs to occupy, which exclude the tenant occupied area, we're looking for a reduction to $45,360 rounded. Now, I just want to take you back up to our page 1 for a moment. The gross floor area of this building is 13,010 square feet. The premise area excludes the basement restaurant. That's not operated by the owner of this hotel. It's a separate tenancy. So it would necessarily have a separate premise or for business assessment purposes. So the premise area at 11,896 is what is also used for occupancy costs by the assessor, but there is no such deduction for the leased premises that you saw within his brief. So based on all of that, we're seeking a reduction down to $45,360. And with that, I am open for questions.
Okay, questions, Mr. Brown?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. So I'm comparing your workup for the ARV to mine, and it looks like the only thing we disagree on is the starting figure.
Well, I guess another way of saying that is that the occupancy costs are the same.
And the square footage.
No, your 11,896 is in fact the premise area. When you look, and I just sort of went over this at our page 1. So the gross floor area of this building is actually 13,010 square feet.
Yeah, no, I'm using 11,896.
No, I understand that, but the reason for that difference is the presence of the tenant-occupied restaurant in the basement. And that's why when you value the entire when you value the entire property, it includes the rental income from that restaurant, and so you must therefore, as we did with McLaren, right, the barber shop, the used to be a dim sum or a sushi restaurant, you deduct those tenant occupied areas from the gross floor area and adjust your economic rent calculation. It's exactly the same process we used here.
Okay. Our realty workup on page 6, there's no financials for that?
These are, well, I'm here on my oath, and I can tell you that based on my personal work on this property, that these figures represent what was shown in the financial statements.
Okay. You'll agree that the difference between a realty hearing and a BA hearing is the evidence is submitted 2 weeks before on a realty hearing and the day of on a BA hearing?
Well, those are the board's rules. Yes.
I know. I'm leading up to something. So in the case of a realty, that would give me time to go over your figures, prepare rebuttal. Where in this case, I'm just seeing this for the first time this morning. I really can't really speak to any realty value on this.
I can't help but notice that within your evidence, you attached the realty decision where you were the assessor representing the city. So I assume that you are familiar with this.
Yeah, I mean, going back to, when was it? October 2019. But those are my questions. Thank you.
Okay. Jeff, do you have any questions?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Okay, Terry, any questions?
No, thank you.
Okay, and I have no questions, so thank you very much for that. And we'll come to our last property, which is 1400 Notre Dame Avenue. Let me open the files. Okay, we have 1400 Notre Dame, so you can proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is Board of Revision file number 20-834. The property is located at 1400 Notre Dame. This is the Canadiana Motor Inn. Roll number is 54780. And the 2021 ARV is at $634,800. This is based on, this was heard in, 2020. And it was reduced from $8,880,000 down to $7,506,000. I've attached that. So we've taken that new starting figure. I'll just mention quickly the BA was also heard on this in 2020, and it was reduced from $726,060 down to $634,800, which is where we currently sit. We've taken that revised starting figure at $7,506,000, taken 10% of that for the economic rent. We've deducted $28,000 for leased premises, $28,125, and then we've added the cost to occupy to that new figure. This gives us our ARV at $634,800. And I will note that the 2020 realty and I believe the BA yes, 2020 realty and BA are both pending meeting board.
Okay. Any questions, Mr. Borgstrom?
I do have a few, thank you. So again, as we look at your page 1, there is no basis or analysis from which we can arrive at the valuation of $7,506,000 other than the border revision orders.
That's correct. I'm following the border revision orders.
Right, and so just looking at those again, for both the realty and the business assessment appeal that you've included within your evidence, neither you nor I were involved in those appeals.
That's correct.
Okay. Now, with the adjustment for leased premises, there was no such adjustment on the previous property, and you suggested that this was a standard approach?
No, I just said we had the same square footage in the end. Mm-hmm. I followed, going back to the previous decision, I followed the municipal board's certificate of agreement that we had signed in, when was that, 2018?
Yeah, so let's, but what I was talking about for the previous one was the adjustment of the...
Yeah, that one we had a previous certificate of agreement from the municipal board that I followed.
For occupancy costs.
That's slightly different.
Okay. For this particular property, though, in the course of your preparation for this appeal, did you review the analysis that was done at arriving at the city's realty value for this property?
I did not. Because it's pending at the muni board on both realty and BA, I feel like that's a more appropriate venue to be getting into the specifics of this.
So that I'm clear, you did not review statements, the workups on this property for the realty end of it?
No, we had a starting figure. I used that starting figure.
Okay. Those are my questions. Thank you.
Okay, Carrie, do you have any questions of the assessor?
I do not, thank you.
Okay, Jeff?
I don't, thank you.
Okay. So you can proceed, Mr. Borgstrom.
Thank you. So the first place I'm going to start is to tell you that this is the Canadiana Motor Inn. It was at one time a thrift lodge. It's gone back to just being a Canadiana Motor Inn. I can tell you that I have personally reviewed the statements for this property. I can also tell you that we worked for the previous owner dating back, I believe, more than 20 years for the previous owner on this particular hotel. I can tell you that it is something of an oddball, and let me just take you to our page 4 to show you that. So there are 2 pictures on page 4. We go through a description on page 3 and 4, and I'm happy to have you read it at your leisure. You can see the top picture on page 4. There's a little red dot. That's the hotel itself. But on this property, on the same realty roll, is also an industrial strip mall. So our purpose here for business assessment purposes is to determine the appropriate business assessment on the hotel only. The industrial strip is occupied by tenants. They would have their own separate business assessments. And so our approach here was to take a look at the income and expenses and to create our own analysis and make a determination as to what the appropriate realty value should be for the hotel only. So as you look at the picture on the top of page 4, you can see the red dot, that's the hotel. The structure running east to west within this picture, that's the strip mall, sort of towards the blue line at the bottom, or sort of the middle lower third of the picture. And you get a little better idea of those strips on pages 4 and 5. Page 5 at the top, you can see there in the upper left-hand corner, that's the industrial strip mall that I'm talking about. That does not and ought not appear on this business assessment. And the picture on the bottom of page 5 is the actual hotel itself. So let me also, before I begin our analysis, take you to pages 14 and 15. I did a quick search of construction-related permits for this property. There have been no significant improvements to this property in recent history. And so there haven't been any significant upgrades to the operations that might impact the income potential of the property. Moving on to page 16, I can tell you, Edwards Holdings was the previous owner of this property. The way they set up their financial statements was in two parts. Edwards Holdings had the operational statements for the hotel operation. And then there was a numbered company. So the Edwards Holdings statements you can see on page 16 starting, and I'll take you down to page 20. That's a numbered company, 500-5604 Manitoba Limited. That's for the industrial property. And let me just confirm that for you on page 22 under note 1, under description of business. You'll see there that says 5604 Manitoba Ltd is a private company incorporated in the province of Manitoba. The company owns and operates Canadiana Place, a rental strip mall in Winnipeg, Manitoba. So you can see there that the owner tracks the income and expenses for the hotel separately from the income and expenses for the strip mall. So it's really quite easy to determine a realty value for the hotel only for this property. I can show you here that we have included, starting at page 16 and following, the income and expense statements for both the hotel and the strip to show you that it's done separately for the years 2018, we're showing 2017, as well as 2016, showing 2015. I can tell you, and this almost never happens, these statements actually have a year end of March 31st, 2018. And so the income statements actually fall right on the reference date. So we're encompassing a full 12-month period for each of these years prior to the reference date, and actually just prior to the reference date. So the other thing I want to show you really quickly, if we just take a look at page 17, and those are numbered bold and in the bottom right-hand corner. On the previous hotel, I talked about how owners take compensation. I can tell you, based on our personal knowledge of this hotel operation previously, the owners didn't take compensation out of the income of the hotel. Rather, they took dividends out on the statements. And you'll see that under net earnings. You'll see dividends there under 2018 and 2017 near the bottom, just above retained earnings end of year. 2018, they took dividends of $500,000, and in 2017, they took dividends of $1 million. That's how they chose to take their compensation, and so there is no owner's charged time within these statements. So because the dividends don't show up as an operating expense, it then becomes necessary to make an adjustment for owner's wages as we go through our analysis. Having said that, I can tell you that's not what we did. We allowed the expenses as shown. We did not make a separate allowance for additional owner's time for this property. Our value for realty assessment purposes may well end up lower than what we're suggesting here. So we've established that the income and expense statements show the hotel operation separately from the industrial strip. So we can then take a look at page 7 where we go through our analysis. And I realize the page is a little crowded, but if you expand it just a little bit, as you look at 2017 and 18, you'll see that the room revenues significantly increased over 2015 and 2016. So immediately in my mind, knowing that there was no significant improvements to the property, why? Turns out the reason was the presence of First Nations evacuees arising from flood circumstances at their home. So I can tell you that we've made an adjustment for that. And I can tell you that that is consistent. If you look at the comments or the remarks, the increase is non-recurring. It's temporary. Anybody looking to purchase the hotel April 1st of 2018 would understand, the knowledgeable purchaser would understand that these are temporary revenues, that they are not recurring, that they didn't occur previous to that, certainly in 15 and 16. And I can also tell you from personal knowledge that this is exactly, our treatment here is exactly what was applied in the Holiday Inn South, Winnipeg South. That was an appeal in which non-recurring room revenues were deducted. That was a 2002 appeal. In that particular case, the room revenues were adjusted for the 1999 World Junior Hockey Championships here, the 1990 Pan Am Games that were held here, as well as the 1998 Grey Cup. I can tell you that the city at the Board of Revision hearing for that property, we handled the property, so I can speak to this. The Board of Revision in that case didn't agree with our position. I can tell you that at the municipal board, the city adjusted the room revenues to almost to the dollar, certainly within a very close margin to what we had suggested, adjusting for non-recurring revenues. I've taken the same approach here. So when we look at 2015 under rooms, line number 1, see a little column there with line numbers. 2015 was a little over 909,500. 2016 almost 924,000. A jump up to 1,364,615 is simply not. I mean, it's not reasonable. It's not sustainable. Something went on, right? So we adjusted for the room revenues, assuming an increase in those room revenues year over year. We've stabilized at $1 million. Similarly, with the food revenues, you'll see the same sort of increase in the revenues arising from that temporary increase in occupancy. So we've adjusted those revenues downward to $600,000. On the statements, the beverage revenue you see there, you'll see the vendor revenue. They're all very nicely broken out for us. They do have wages, which we have shown here on line 13. The wages on the statements of Edward Holdings include all wages. They include the room expense, or the room staff, cleanup, laundry, janitorial. They include the beverage room staff. They include the front desk staff. They include the vendor staff. And so that's an all-in. And so we Similarly with the beverage cost, they don't split out the vendor revenue. We have made an allocation based on estimates, and our estimate based on the adjusted beverage cost or the stabilized beverage cost is at the same proportion beverage room to vendor as the city applied in the 2020 realty appeal. So while our figures are different, the proportion is exactly the same. And so from that, we go through our calculations. Again, the admin in general at $106,747 at 4.1% of the income is extremely low. It's below even the city's modeling, and that's arising from our not including owners' wages in there. So we've stabilized, as we typically do, the heat and power, the advertising and promotions, and you'll see there a line going across in red. Again, that's because the management or the business value management fee, the mechanism by which we remove business value, is not an operating expense. And so that's why the net operating incomes are different. Similarly with the reserve at 3%, again, that's why there are the differences. The insurance, business tax, property tax are all stabilized at the actual expenses. That's the typical approach that are used in the valuation of hotels for realty assessment purposes. So we come up with a net operating income of $475,000, give or take. And when you remove the business value management fee and the reserve, you're going to come up with a value not completely dissimilar with 15 and 16, and again 17 and 18 are distorted because of the increase in room revenue and food costs. So there is no difference between the city and ourselves in terms of the realty assessment and with the cap rate at 12%. We do disagree with the city. In this particular case, the city has applied a 15% allowance on FF&E. We suggest 10%. We suggest 15 because a significant portion of their revenues are derived from rooms and food. Out of 3.4 or approaching $3.5 million, the beverage income is only about $675,000. So it is not a significant component. That's why this particular property warrants that increase in the allowance for personal for FF&E, which is furniture, fixtures, and equipment. Based on all of that, including the stabilized income, we think that the appropriate realty value should be $3,065,000. We go through the calculations, and so that value is for the hotel only. It completely disregards the presence of the industrial strip. And so we go through the calculations on page 9. Based on that $3,365,000 capitalized value for the hotel, take 10% of that. There's no disagreement with respect to the areas to which we apply occupancy costs. And we are looking for a reduction to $471,720. And I believe that is the information we wanted to cover here. So I am open for questions.
Hey, Mr. Brown, any questions?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, just one. This is pending Muni Board for Realty and BA for 2020?
Yeah, but the Board of Revision actually previously in business assessment appeal hearings admonished me fairly severely for not bringing in evidence, simply trying to use it as a stepping stone for an upper board. So we have completed our own independent separate analysis here. That's what we're presenting.
Okay, just one more question. I noticed those previous Board of Revisions were not conducted by you, but those muni boards are in your authorization now?
I believe we have taken over those appeals, yes.
Okay, those are my questions. Thank you.
Okay, Jeff, any questions?
I'm a bit stuck on the, you refer to them as temporary revenues or non-recurring revenues. We see a nice escalation from 2015 through 2018. I know you identified the rationale for that escalation, but how do we know that this is not sort of the part and parcel, the growth in demand for their facility?
So I can tell you that this location. Let me just pull up our previous notes on this property. This is not a location of choice or a destination of choice for tourists. Bear with me while I pull this up here. Oops. So I can tell you, let me just wait for it to open here. Based on, and as I said, we dealt with this client dating back, I'm going to say at least 20 years. I can tell you that their comments to us previously, there certainly has been in the past an issue with a government correctional facility behind the hotel on Midland. There was previously reported by the owner were 40 to 50 parolees per day report there, and most take the bus from in front of the hotel. They were coming in, they were looking to use the phone, they were hanging around, keeping warm in the winter, and so there are locational issues with this hotel. When you look back at the history of this hotel, in terms of 15 and 16, we know that for 17 and 18 that they were occupied by flood evacuees. I believe that they were occupied previously. You'll go back a lot of years. I think it was around 2011 when there was many First Nations displaced by floodwaters. So there would have been a hiccup back there then too. But when you look at normalized 2015, 2016 as compared to 17 and 18, no hotel sees that kind of an increase in revenue unless there is a significant physical change to the property. That's not the case here. Did they expand rooms? No. Were there significant improvements to the interior? No. And you can see all of that within the permits search that we attached here. So based on the income for 2015 and 2016, if you flatten it out, it's an opinion, and I stabilized it at $1 million. If you look at even just the 3-year average of 2016 to 2018, you're less than $1 million too. So the typical approach in these things is to stabilize based on a 3-year average, and that's the expressed preferred approach by the municipal board. But in terms of normalizing income and removing those non-recurring temporary revenues, that's what we've done here. And as I went over earlier, and maybe I went over it a little too quickly, dating back to the older appeal on the Holiday Inn Winnipeg South, that's exactly the approach that ultimately resulted in the resolution of that appeal.
I will caution you, Mr. Bergstrom, that if you're going to refer to a decision of the municipal board, please provide that decision to us.
Well, I'm happy to do that. I can tell you that it's a certificate of agreement, and I haven't included all of that information here, but I can tell you we worked on the Holiday in Winnipeg South. We worked on the Canadiana, dating back all of those years. I can tell you on my oath that was the basis of that settlement, was the adjustment of the room revenues. So I hope that addresses the member's question.
Thank you. I have no other questions.
Okay, Carrie, any questions?
Oh, thank you.
If you look at the assessor's evidence, it appears that the previous decision did average, use a 3-year average for room revenue, which was in line with what the municipal board recommends.
Well, first of all, that's not my evidence. Second of all, I don't know what other adjustments might have been presented to this board in terms of, you'll see here that I've adjusted for food revenues, for example. I'm not sure what other allocations or adjustments were made for owners' wages or any of other line items. And so the assessor, other than the board decisions, the assessor hasn't presented any analysis, and by his own testimony hasn't even looked at them. We have presented here a stabilized analysis of the subject hotel's income and expenses. We've come up with a capitalized value, and we've included the financial statements showing or supporting those figures that we've included within our table on page 7.
Okay. I have no more questions. So is it either part, Mr. Brown, do you wish to do a summary?
Just that these ones that are pending muni board, I feel that it's more prudent just to let it play out there. We can go into the realty in way more detail there, or come to an agreement, and then inevitably the BA will flow through that. And that's the way it's always been done. And I feel that with the constraints of getting the evidence on the day of the BA hearing, that there's just not enough time to go through these, these workups have a lot of moving parts, and there's just not enough time to go over the figures and come up with rebuttal or to vet those numbers. So that's my submission. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Mr. Borgstrom, submission.
Just a couple of quick points. The assessor had ample opportunity to review the evidence on this file to arrive at his own stabilization. I believe the notices of hearing came out in December. So there was ample time for the assessor to look at the evidence, to do his own analysis, and to provide it here. Secondly, our approach is to do it this way, as we've done with other appeals, even where there is a confirmation of a board revision hearing, arising from an admonition from this board to present evidence on which they can make a decision. It was very clearly indicated to me that this board didn't want to be used as a stepping stone to file a further appeal at the municipal board. That's exactly what we've done here. So with that, I anticipate that the board will make its decision based on the evidence presented here.
All right, thank you very much. So that concludes today's hearing. So thank you for your time and your presentations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Bye.